promoting the free exchange of ideas, questioning the status quo, and having some fun along the way. This is the Are We Idiots Show. Now here are your hosts, Mark Weaver and Rich Kroll.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Are We Idiots Show. We are your hosts, as mentioned, Richard Kroll and Marcus Weaver.
Good day to you, Mark.
A little high-pitched voice there today, Richie.
I think I sat on a fork.
Any words of wisdom? I know we started that last episode, but any words of wisdom for our audience?
Absolutely. Speaking of forks, I often...
Speaking of forks.
Who says that? I often get called into emergency status to fix the dishwasher. My wife and daughter, they just pile everything, no order to it in the dishwasher. Drives me nuts because you can get twice as many dishes in the dishwasher. If you just take a little time, you apply a little geometry. So one thing I want to say is a little tip to fans out there. When you're putting the utensils in the dishwasher.
Up. You got to put them up, right? Not down.
Up, that's an extra tip.
Okay.
Group them. So think about this. Take all the forks in one compartment, all the knives in another compartment, all the spoons in another. So you just grab the whole lot and stick them in the drawer at once.
That seems very efficient. Now, some might argue that it's the same amount of time either way because you have to take the time up front to sort them up front or at the end. What's the difference?
Do you have 65 utensils from one dinner?
Yeah. A family of 8.
As you're putting them in the dishwasher, just group them. Normally.
Or you could be like my family where we have 2 houses and no working dishwasher in either of them.
That's a different story.
We have to wash them by hand.
Hey, I do want to do one shout out because you did this for your wife a little while ago.
Go for it.
My wife, Jill, and I just celebrated our 10th anniversary. She is still a very beautiful woman. I won't give her out her age. She'll be mad at me. Great mother, great wife, great caretaker, great person, great morals.
Great friend.
And I'm lucky to have her. I hope we have another 10 years.
Just 10? Or that's all you plan to live?
I don't know how far I'm going to make it.
Well, let's hope it's more than 10 years. At least I hope so.
All right, 20.
But yes, congratulations to you guys, and it's always good to celebrate a happy marriage. So on the show this week, folks, we have our Idiot of the Week award. Rich has some nominees for us. Then we're going to talk about Personal Finance 101. And some might say that that's a boring topic, but it's a big problem. We attack the status quo, and I have some data here. And if you listen to our show back early, I guess those first 4 or 5 episodes, the immediate gratification nation, we talked about some of the problems that our households are in, and we're going to delve a little deeper, give you a roadmap. And then we're going to conclude the show with some examples of how not to spend your money, some well-known celebrities and how they mismanaged their money.
We're getting a roadmap today?
A little bit of a roadmap.
Did you say status quo or status quo earlier?
I think I said status.
I'll have to listen back to that.
I don't think I've ever said status.
I hope you didn't.
Oh, well. Lay it on me, Richie. Who are your nominees for Idiot of the Week?
All right, this first one caught my eye, mostly because of the video I couldn't believe I was watching. But there is a couple in California where this is even hard to explain. So there is one person, and I have to use the word person, Tony McGinn, a.k.a. Tony Bark, not to be confused with Tony Stark, is a 30-year-old transgender man in Los Angeles, California.
Not a man. Is he transgender man, or is it does he have a they? Is he a they?
I guess he started as a they, and he became a transgender man. He also identifies as a puppy.
Oh boy.
He's a human puppy, and his husband is his trainer. I wish you could see the video because this guy, who is a human being, is dressed in black S&M dog gear, where he's got like the crotch panties with the tail, and he's got the sleeveless vest with the leash, and the dog collar, and he's got the muzzle over his mouth, and he only walks on all fours. He barks, and he sits up on his hind legs and begs for a treat, and the husband pets him when he does good deeds, and he walks him around the yard when he has to pee.
And this isn't like a hoax, to get on TV or anything like that.
No, this is their life.
Oh my goodness.
So Tony barks, walks around on all fours, and loves playing fetch. And the one husband actually throws him like a ball, and he runs off on all fours and brings it back to him. Now the husband says, "We don't make it sexual, but I have nothing against those who do," said his husband and trainer, Andrew. And more power to those who actually do. So,
oh my goodness.
I don't know what's wrong with people, but if I hear anybody say, well, you got to be politically correct. If that's the way they want to choose their life, that's their choice. And if that's their lifestyle, no, it's ridiculous. Can I get a ridiculous on that?
Well, it is their choice to do that, but it's also our choice to call them idiots and ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And to say, my line is, when they claim that there's no such thing as gender anymore. I mean that when you discount millions of years of biology and reproduction by saying there is no such thing as male and female genders, that's the bridge too far for me. But if this person wants to act like a dog, so be it. They are idiots, but let them act like dogs. It doesn't hurt me.
Doesn't hurt me either, but that's my first nominee.
And a good one.
Tony
Bark.
And a
good one. I will definitely claim they're idiots. Now, if you can top that, that'd be amazing.
I am now going to elect an entire county, and maybe an entire state for Idiot of the Week.
Well, a few weeks ago, we had London, right? You nominated. My nominee was for the city of London because they were such idiots. Let's hear it.
Now, I got this idea from our good buddy Jack Mullen, from our very politically slanted text group. So I looked into it, and he was onto something. Voters in Nevada last night, and I know we don't even get into the election, but right, the Democrats.
The midterms were last night as we taped this, and as we predicted, the Democrats took the House, and Republicans retained control.
We did predict that.
We did.
Voters in Nevada last evening elected a deceased pimp to the state assembly, voting on Dennis Hoff 3 weeks after the famous brothel owner died while partying for 4 days with Ron Jeremy celebrating his 72nd birthday. Now, that seems very strange. I would think you think it also is strange as well. Dennis was still on the ballot, and apparently because he won the primary and this death was recent, they had to keep him on the ballot. I don't know why they had to keep him on the ballot. But he was found dead on October 16th at his famed Love Ranch in Crystal, Nevada. He beat Democratic opponent Lysia Romanov in a landslide. So I guess we got a pimp versus potentially somebody from the Russian mafia. Only in Nevada, right? Polling places, to their defense, posted signs alerting voters to Hoff's death, but they didn't stop them from voting for the man who made a living running sex ranches by a landslide. And there's
so what happens? They have to appoint someone, or his family appoints someone?
No, the next person in line in the district that's from the winning party, which he was Republican,
right,
will just be given the job. Now, there's a huge notice. I mean, this thing was poster board size, and it says, "Notice of death of candidate 2018 general election in accordance with Nevada revised statutes. Please be advised that the following candidate is deceased. Dennis Hoff, candidate for State Assembly, District 36. Please note that the name of this deceased candidate is on the ballot and must remain on the ballot. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact Nye County Clerk."
Don't bog me down with details. I just want to come here and vote. He's dead? Okay.
Small detail. Maybe actually a dead politician will do better than a live one. But there's so much to this guy. During his campaign, Dennis nicknamed himself the Trump from Pahrump in reference to the town where he lived in Nevada. He got over 60% of the vote, And here's one that's going to bother you, though. I got to throw this in there. Hoff ran for office in 2016 as a libertarian, but lost the race.
So he had to die to win a race instead of a dead guy has a better chance than a libertarian to win a race. Oh boy, we won't go into how easy Rich wants to vote now. He blames the Libertarian Party because he doesn't know enough about them.
Let me tell you something.
He doesn't want to do any work. He wants the Staples easy button.
I will
in his
do
booth.
work, but help
Very
me
little
out.
work.
Help me out, libertarians. Can you spend a little money in marketing, promotion, and education so I at least know the names of who your people are so I can plug them into Google? If I have to search and scrape and
my
crimp
goodness.
to find out who
Get
the
my
libertarian
violin out.
candidates are and why I should vote for them, and they want me to figure that out, help me out a little bit.
Don't pull him away from his Walking Dead and his Netflix, so he has to, invest in the country. Libertarians,
I'm
you
a
have to
busy
come to
per-
his
I'm
door
busy.
with a casserole.
I'm too busy.
All right, folks, we're going to move on, and we're going to talk about personal finance. And I know this may sound boring, but it isn't, because it's key to everyone's life. And they don't teach it in school. And we're going to go back to our episode on the immediate gratification nation. We talked about this, Richie. And I think, if I remember correctly, we had a slight disagreement as to why a large percentage of American households are in such poor shape. And if I'm recalling correctly, you basically said it was because people, I'm paraphrasing, but people just figure they can figure it out later and they don't need to make hard decisions now because they'll make it up later. That's about what you said, right? Something like that.
That was one of the variables. Wasn't
Right.
the only one, but I think most young people just think they have time to figure stuff out, time to catch up.
Right.
They want to live in the moment. They don't worry about 30 or 40 years down the road.
Correct. And I absolutely agree that has some basis, but my main take was that people are ill-equipped and ill-informed about how to budget and spend less than they make and just basics of existing. We talked about that they don't teach it in high school, they don't teach it in college. Even if you're a business major, basic household finance is not taught. And so that's what we're going to do today. Just give the listeners out there, and if you believe the statistics, 40% of Americans don't have $1,000 saved for an emergency. 40% couldn't pass this basic quiz, which I'm going to give to you right now. Now, this is not a trick quiz, Rich.
You messed me up. And folks, just to clarify, a couple of weeks ago, we were doing a show.
Unrehearsed, obviously.
And Mark asked me who had a higher propensity for murder, men or women. Now, obviously, 98% of all murders committed are by men, but I thought it was a trick question. There was some angle to it, so I said women, which threw his whole line of reasoning off after that.
I was trying to build a case and it didn't work. All right, let me give you this quiz, Rich. And by the way, you don't need any notepads, I don't think, for this. All right, so this survey was for 2,300 adults, and there was both millennials and baby boomers in it. Question number 1, which of the following statements describes the main function of the stock market? A, the stock market brings people who want to buy stocks together with people who want to sell stocks. B, the stock market helps predict stock earnings. C, the stock market results in an increase in the price of stocks. D, none of the above.
See, here's where you confuse me, because the closest answer that's correct is A.
Correct, and that is the correct answer. That is the correct answer.
But how
I'm not trying to fool you here. Just give me your answer.
All right, but how stocks actually come into being?
That's
are
not what it
raising
says. What's the
money
main
for
function of the
companies.
stock market? What's the main function of the stock market?
All right, just
All
wanna
right,
make sure
so
okay.
now we know why the America can't pass a quiz, because Rich just can't even. All right, question number 2. If you had $100 in a savings account and the interest rate was 2% per year, after 5 years, how much do you think you would have in the account if you left the money to grow? Answer A, exactly $102. Answer B, less than $102. Answer C, more than $102.
More than $102.
Exactly. Exactly. And by the way, that was the highest score. Someone would answer that. 73% of the people got that. It's the follow-on question. If the interest rate on your savings account was 1% per year, but inflation was 2% per year, after 1 year, how much would you be able to buy with the money in the account? A, more than today. B, exactly the same as today. Or C, less than today.
Less than today?
Exactly. Okay. And by the way, for millennials, the group you like to pick on, 40% of them got that right. 60% of the millennials got that question wrong.
See, that's frightening.
Right.
What are they teaching in our schools today? Oh,
I won't even go through the last one because it's more of the same. The bottom line is, folks, people don't know about finance. They don't know about budgeting, right? And I would say that you have to treat your household finance like a business. And so in my case, it's the Mark and Mary Ellen Corporation. It's the Rich and Jill Corporation, right? And a lot of people don't think of their personal finance as a business. And you have to think about it as income and expenses. And a business is only profitable if you have higher income than your expenses. And the key here is the expense side. We'll get into that. We'll spend most of the time on that. But a lot of people don't think about it this way. And so on the income side, you got to protect your income. So from a career perspective, you have to know what your market value is at all times. It's your duty to know if you're being paid properly or you can get paid better somewhere else. And that you have to factor in other factors as well as quality of life and what have you. But at some level, you have to know what your value is to that organization. Let me repeat this. You have to know what your value is, but your value is based on a portion of the value that you create. You're not worth X amount of dollars just because someone says you are. Someone only pays you a portion of what value you create for them. That's what business owners do. Business owners don't hire people unless you can make them money. And people have to understand that from an income perspective. So, and then you need to protect your income with insurance. So before I move on to the expenses, which we'll spend most of our time, any qualms with what I said on being a business, thinking about it as a business, and always knowing what your income could be or should be?
Well, I'm a little depressed because the other night my 9-year-old daughter said, "Daddy, you're worth $1 million to me."
Is she hiring?
I hope so. Well, maybe she meant dead because that's my insurance policy.
Yeah, well, you do need insurance.
No, so far, even though you're a libertarian, and I agree with some libertarian premises, you are on track and being very smart so far today.
And by the way, just speaking about insurance, if you have kids, if you have dependents, all right, you need to have life insurance and probably disability insurance too, because you're actually 10 times more likely to become disabled than you are to die prematurely.
Did you say depends or dependents?
Dependents.
So not the adult diapers.
Well, that's you have both, right? Because you're at that age where you have young kids and you're aging. No, so yes, if you have dependents, you have to have insurance to support your income. And to do a little quick calculus, so let's say you make $100,000 a year, you have to have enough to, if you invest the insurance proceeds at a reasonably secure investment vehicle, to replace that income. So if you're getting 5% a year, you need $2 million insurance to replace that $100,000 income. Most people just say, I'll go out and buy some insurance, and they just pick a random number. They don't do any math to figure out what you need to do to replace your income. So be mindful of that. It's not just about making income, it's about protecting it. And if you have dependents, you have to do it. And by the way, if you have dependents, you also have to have a will. If you have assets, you have to have a will.
Is this a lecture?
No, it's a roadmap.
Roadmap.
It's a blueprint.
I meant roadmap.
It's a blueprint and a roadmap.
I meant roadmap.
All right, so now I want to go on to expenses because that's really where I think most people have the biggest problem. And you should be able to tell someone, if asked, an accountant or what have you, where you spend your money. Guess what percentage of households use a budget, Rich?
10.
It's actually a little higher, about 30%,
I'm surprised.
which is surprising. Now, that doesn't mean they stick to it. That just means that they've done a budget. The question is, do they really stick to it? And, of course, a budget is ever changing, right? So, in my case, I have used Quicken for, I don't even know, 20 years or what have you. The reality is there's plenty of tools out there. There's Quicken, there's Mint.com, there's a thing called Personal Capital, there's BudgetSimple.com. But you have to be able to know when you're spending money and where you're spending money. And most people don't do that. And I can tell you that most financial planners, I thought we lost power. Most financial planners tell you that you need to track your expenses in at least 10 categories. I went and pulled my Quicken report. I'll show it to you here. There's 50 different categories that I track expenses in. And it's very simple. You just, you hook up your credit cards to it, you hook up your bank accounts to it, and when you spend something, the credit card transactions roll into the software, and you just categorize them as you hit accept. It's very, very simple. And then at the end of the year, I can total it all up by category, and I can divide it over by 12 and create a budget for the following year. And so people should know that they can do this very simply with very little effort. And if you don't have any idea where your money's being spent, there's no way you'll ever get ahead.
So, by the way, it's even easier than that. You can do this manually on a piece of paper or an Excel spreadsheet.
Right.
And everyone knows their top 10 categories right off the top of their head. My mortgage, my car, my cell bill, my cable bill, my food bill, my clothing bill, my charities that I give to. Except the top 10 you can rattle off, which are typically your biggest expenses, to get as detailed as 50. Like with some of the weird clothes you buy. I guess that's different. But it's
I'm
not
very
that
easy
hard.
on clothes, by the way.
It's not that hard.
But here's where I'll take a beef with what you said, because the problem is if you do it off the top of your head, you'll miss something. And there's always off-budget sheet items, right? I'll just give you an example. We had a bunch of nor'easters here in the Philadelphia region in the spring. I had to spend $1,800 to have a guy come in, and I had a bunch of trees blow down and what have you. That's not in a budget, right? If you have kids that drive, I can guarantee you better budget for accident repair, right? Medical problems, right? Braces. I spent $20,000 in braces over the years, right? So to just kind of think off the top of your head and not assume that you're going to have other expenses, that's where people get in trouble. I think that's the biggest problem is people don't anticipate the expenses that are unanticipatable.
Understood, but all I was saying, it's better than doing nothing. At least getting a general feel for your spending is better than doing nothing.
Yes, it's better than doing nothing, but it's not sufficient because that's why we have 40% of the people in the country that don't have $1,000 saved.
So you're telling me it was not a good idea to buy my posse all Bentleys this Christmas coming up.
We'll get to that at the end of the show, by the way. That's a good, you don't know who I'm going to be highlighting, but that might tie in. So, no, I mean, that's really the biggest thing that I think people are missing. And if only 30% of the people are doing that, then it's not sufficient, and that's why we're in trouble. Now, let's also move on to when you do get a hold of your expenses and you are able to save some money, right? Or spend less than you make. The next step is being wise with that money, right? So the first thing you should do, and we're not investment counselors and we're not going to give investment advice, but if you can invest in a 401k, if your company provides that, you can do that pre-tax. That's a smart thing to do. Certainly if there's matching, take advantage of that. But the way you spend your money is important too. So rule number 1, don't borrow money to buy things that depreciate. And it's just common sense, folks, right? If you're buying assets that could appreciate, that's one thing. But if you're buying cars, jewelry, furniture, clothes, right? These things rapidly depreciate. So you shouldn't borrow money to do that.
Don't put it on a credit card.
Don't put on credit. Don't borrow money, right? I mean, 85% of cars purchased are either leased or through an auto loan. 85%. That's crazy. People are borrowing money, and everyone knows as soon as you drive a new car off the lot, it depreciates 20%. And the people are borrowing money, paying interest, and doing that. And we're addicted to cars in this country, right? Cars are utilitarian, and if you happen to have extra money, fine, go for it, pay cash for it, right? But don't waste your money, especially if your household's in bad shape, by borrowing money to buy a car. And that's a big problem. People spend a high percentage of their money on housing and cars in the United States, and it's a bad
Housing makes
situation.
more sense to me than cars, unless you're living way above your means in $1 million house.
Exactly. I think a lot of people have the thought that they're entitled to live a certain way, and this goes across all things. I think this, social media is dangerous in this way, in that people see all these other people. It's like the Christmas letter, right? Facebook and all these Instagram and all it presents a false front of how people live. And then people think that they have to keep up with them and they're entitled to that because they have it. And then they overspend on all this stuff when they can't do it.
Well, we talked about this category, I don't know when, a couple of shows ago, a couple of weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago, where there was a time in the U.S. a house was a strong investment because 100% of the time it was going to appreciate and go up in value over 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So put your money into it. But as we know, over the last 15 years or 13 years or 10 years, most home investments went the other way. So you're actually getting killed, especially if you're putting money into a large, $1 million house that you can't afford to begin with. You're not going to get that money back necessarily. So you're actually burning cash at both ends.
Right, because there's transaction costs to buy a house, and my wife's a realtor, so I know this. There's a transaction cost at both ends of buying and selling a house. Taxes have gone up a lot in most major metropolitan areas. So is oil and gas and all the utilities have gone up a lot. So over the long term, housing just barely beats inflation. So it's not really a great investment. Most people think because they've paid into it for so long and they've over time paid down their mortgage and they've accumulated some equity, they think that it's a great investment. But if you really add up all the costs associated with a house, with maintenance and taxes and the borrowing costs as opposed to the opportunity costs of investing elsewhere, it's really not a great investment. But people tend to be forced to save because they're paying down over time. So don't buy too much house. All right, the next thing is if you are, have extra money, you don't put all your eggs in one basket. And I'll be honest with you, there was a couple times in my life where I was too heavy in one sector, in the dot bomb thing. I mean, some of us
I'm a victim.
Yeah, some of us were in the technology space. We're all hyped up on technology stocks in the late 90s. And I had too much money. I was diversified, but I wasn't diversified enough. I had too much money in technology stocks. And they got hammered in, I guess, 1999 or 2000, 2001, whatever the timing was. And I didn't do that again because that was stupid. So, everyone makes mistakes. I'm just saying, you got to diversify. And even though it's attractive to try to, jump on something when it's hot, you have to talk to an investment professional, and they're the ones that'll teach you to not get overloaded in one particular area.
Mark, please hold on for just a second. I have to call my broker and sell half my position in Pacific Edible Seaweed.
You've been using that for 30 years.
I guess wasn't a good move by me.
All right. So the last thing I'll say about this, because we have the basics covered, right, and we talked about a will. You need a will. But the decision to how much to save is really an individual one. And this is where you can make a justification for pretty much everything. So in my particular case, we're saving for retirement, but we're not saving as much as we could for retirement because we believe that you have to live life as you go along. and this varies by couples. My parents are, have been pretty frugal, and they've saved probably more than they need to save. There's, of course, other people that save less than we do, and they're figuring on having a more modest retirement. So the decision of how much to save, I think, can be up for debate based on how you want to live your life and whatever. But I think most people would agree that you have to save something from retirement. Social Security was never meant to support you in retirement. So you have to save something for retirement. And whether that's 5% or 10% or 15% or 30% of your income, you have to do that. So be disciplined, folks. It's temptation. There's temptations all over the place out there. You're not entitled to live any particular way. You're not entitled to a big house. You're not entitled to several new cars. You're not entitled to new clothes. You're not entitled to technology. You're not entitled to anything. You have to figure it out and spend less than you make.
So this is not a lecture?
It is. It's kind of a lecture.
It's a roadmap. It's a roadmap wrapped in a lecture.
Well, I often thought that this is such a big problem. I actually would love to teach a high school senior class in this subject. I won't lecture them like I'm doing in a 40-minute podcast.
I will drop out of that class within 10 minutes.
Well, yeah,
but
but
you'd actually be good at it.
But don't you think that these kids and a lot of adults, because the statistics say that, a lot of adults don't know this, or they're not disciplined to follow it. So I think people need straight talk. And I think some people just don't know how to do it. And in my mind, the biggest problem is people don't know how to do a budget. They don't know where their expenses are going. They underestimate how much they spend. They underestimate how much they bring home. They think if they make $60,000 a year, that I can spend $60,000 a year. No, you make $40,000 a year because there's $20,000 a year in taxes. People just don't get into the minutia. And I know I'm a little bit anal and all that kind of stuff.
No, never thought that.
But, you do have to understand what you're doing. It's a big part of people's lives.
It's solid advice, people. Mark is correct. But I will tell you this, though.
Why aren't people doing it? Is it just like you said that the people are postponing it for later? They don't have the discipline? Or is there some of it that they've never been told this information?
All the above. They haven't been educated properly. They think they can always catch up. They don't really, people don't think too far out. Now, as you start to cross, I see it with my friends, once you cross 50, you start to think more about this stuff and then go, oh, crap, I have to catch up now. I wish I did something differently 10, 20, 30 years ago. But you did give me a little peace of mind about a year or two ago when you reminded me that on top of your whatever your retirement vehicle or vehicles or savings are, you do have that supplemental Social Security, which will probably go away someday. So don't completely panic. If you at least did some stuff, you probably have more money than you realize, and you also explained how you probably need less than you think you do because certain large volumes of money can go further than some people think if you're properly budgeted. The reason why I say that is this. How many times do you read about the guy who drops dead? He's got $2 million in the bank for a beautiful retirement. He drops dead at 50 or 60, never to see it. Okay, his family benefits and his beneficiaries, great, but he never, the people that slave and work their fingers to the bone for 45 straight years and then die or are incapacitated. So take that ski vacation or take that basketball vacation or golf vacation sometimes once in a while when you're young enough to enjoy it. Take the wife to Nashville and walk up and down the street seeing the live music, because I don't think some of this stuff you're going to be doing when you're 70, 75, 80.
So a couple of observations there. So one, the danger in that advice is that people will use that to justify living in the moment and not saving. So to me, you always have to save. The question is, how much do you save?
I didn't say that, though.
Right, I understand. And there are people that, hit retirement button and then they die very soon thereafter, and that's sad. But there's many more people that are unprepared for retirement.
True.
And what I think I said to you, which I do agree with, is if let's say there's a 30-year retirement, God willing, the first 15 years between let's say 65 and 80, that's when you're going to spend the majority of your income. So I don't think you need, as long as you have long-term care insurance and or life insurance or health insurance taken care of, then I think, your spending will certainly drop after age, let's say 80. For those next 10 years, you're not going to be traveling the world. You're not going to be golfing 5 days a week. You're not going to be running, marathons in Belize. That's a different level of retirement.
It'll be way too expensive to cart around my iron lung on long trips.
Well, yeah. So that's my advice today. And as we move on, Richie, any final comments before we highlight some people who are really abhorrent at?
I'm fired up to reevaluate. Although I just did a budget exercise.
See, you're doing a budget. There we go.
I did a budget exercise, and I did downsize a couple years ago, recognizing that. Oh, wait a minute. What I make is not going to enable me to have enough savings. So we downsized our home. We downsized our cars. We made some moves to do this. So absolutely, it's important. Or you will wake up someday crapping your pants, scared,
like you're on a ski trip and got hit by someone.
Just like that. You'll get blindsided.
Well, I do agree that the willingness to adjust your lifestyle downward is probably your best attribute. I mean, I don't mean you.
Me personally?
I don't mean you. No, I mean everyone. And I think that's a great comfort if you don't feel like you're entitled to a certain lifestyle, and if you can live happily in a 1-bedroom apartment or 2-bedroom apartment and do some nice things, that can be a relatively modest retirement lifestyle. And of course, there's everywhere north of that where you want to travel the world and buy yachts, which will lead us into our next segment.
Well, I was encouraged that when I walked into your house and your wife was making dinner, she did, instead of your typical Wednesday lobsters, it was shrimp and crab. So even
we're cutting back.
You're cutting back.
And we're going to go eat in the Maserati.
Yes.
All right, folks. So we're going to end the show today with just highlighting some ways that you don't want to emulate. And I have 4 different people that you have heard of that have done really poor jobs of finances. Number 1, Richie, Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp.
Everyone loves Johnny Depp.
Great actor.
Great actor. A bunch of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, what have you. Well, in Johnny's bankruptcy filing, it was revealed that he lived a $2 million a month lifestyle.
$2 million per month.
$2 million per month. And it also listed excessive splurges, including $75 million on 14 residences.
Sure, you need that many.
$18 million on a luxury yacht. $30,000 per month on wine.
Well, it's good wine.
It's good wine, I guess so, right? But the all-timer, most notably, Depp paid more than $3 million to blast the ashes of author Hunter S. Thompson over in Aspen, Colorado, with a specially made cannon.
Oh, that's
So he bought a specially made cannon and bought the ashes of Hunter S. Thompson and blasted them over Aspen.
Why wouldn't that be worth it? Very sentimental. He's very sentimental.
Shocking that he had to declare bankruptcy.
I'm surprised.
Next one, Michael Jackson, the king of pop, right? He was supposedly $400 million in debt when he died in 2009.
Who lets him get to that level of debt?
Well, there was lots of things. He had his Neverland Ranch. He was sued, of course, by several younger families of younger people that he had to settle out of court on.
Was there gender involved in that?
There's no such thing as gender.
Oh, my
Rich.
bad.
Haven't we learned that?
You have learned that.
Here's the good news for his heirs. Even though they were $400 million in debt, the estate basically sold his rights to all this stuff, and they get a portion of it now. And its estate now makes $75 million per year and has closed all the debt. So he actually, his people that were inherited his money were pretty smart and got him out of the hole.
Good to hear.
Nicolas Cage.
I like Nicolas.
Nick Cage, yeah. He had some good movies, right? He was actually Oscar winner for Leaving Las Vegas. He had a $100 million fortune. And he was property heavy. You mentioned earlier about the 2008 real estate crash. Well, unfortunately, Nick owned castles in England and Germany, an island in the Bahamas, a Tudor mansion in Los Angeles, a cottage in Glastonbury, Scotland. And between 2000 and 2007, Cage reportedly bought 4 luxury yachts, including one which had 12 master bedrooms in it.
How many yachts do you need to water ski behind? By the way, I've always recommended to my famous entertainment friends to never buy more than 2 castles.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. No, you only need 2 castles.
You
no
don't need more
more
than
than
2.
that. And he had Ferraris and Lamborghinis. One of the Lamborghinis was owned by the Shah of Iran at one point. But perhaps his most bizarre purchase were 2 rare albino king cobras called Moby and Shay. And then he also bought a 67 million year old dinosaur skull.
How much for that?
It didn't say. The article didn't say, but it was a lot. He lives now in a rented home outside of Las Vegas.
So he is truly leaving
He's
Las
truly
Vegas.
bankrupt. So yeah, don't do that. The last one was Allen Iverson, and we're getting a little long in the show. But basically, Allen Iverson spent $154 million that he earned playing basketball. He did it by buying the typical Bentleys and everything, and Rolls Royces and what have you for his posse and himself. Of course, luxury clothes and jewelry and houses. He also blew a lot of money gambling, including $1 million in one night at an Atlantic City casino. But what I think is funny for the listeners is Iverson was famous for never wanting to pack clothes. So when he was traveling with the Sixers, he never brought clothes with him when he went on road trips. He would just go to the city and buy a whole new wardrobe of clothes. And when he left the city, he'd leave them in the hotel. So he never wanted to pack clothes. He didn't feel like he would bother with that.
That's a nuisance.
He just bought clothes and just left them.
I know how annoying it is to pack and travel, so I understand that. 2 quick Iverson stories. I knew somebody that in the old famous bar restaurant, TGIF Fridays in Bala Cynwyd.
Right.
Iverson and his posse were huge visitors there.
Barkley was too in the old days, right?
Yes, he was. I think Iverson ran up like a $75,000 bar tab and never paid it. And then he lived somewhere in this area, Montgomery County, Chester County.
Gladwin, I think.
Gladwin. And they saw there was a Bentley on the side of a road, a back road somewhere. And after a couple of months, they realized, wait a minute, this is sitting here abandoned. And it was one of the Bentleys that Allen had given to one of his friends who, on a partying spree, forgot that he parked it and left it there. And $150,000 car just sitting there for months.
Well, folks, those are the extreme examples, obviously. And by the way, unfortunately, Rich, in the NBA, 60% of the NBA players 5 years hence their career, 60% of them have declared bankruptcy.
It's a crime. It's a shame.
And the NFL's not a whole lot better. So, all right, folks, hope you had a good time enjoying the show today. Tune in next week, or actually next episode, when we talk about thankfulness. And it's important because we do a lot of griping on this show and pointing out what's wrong. But it's important as we close in on Thanksgiving to be thankful for the things that we do have. And we're going to spend the next show talking about thankfulness. So what do you think of that, Rich? We're changing things up.
I'm thankful for you.
I'm thankful for you, buddy. But as always, please remember, if what you see or hear sounds idiotic, then we're just the guys to help you sort it out. See y'all next episode. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Are We Idiots Show. Please subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher so you can enjoy all episodes.